I can't tell you how many times I've seen in the comment section, yeah bro, but I play in a serious league. This would never happen in my league. I can't believe we're here in 2025 and there's still dudes out there trying to have a virtual measuring contest over the fantasy football league they play in. But if I'm being completely honest, it got me thinking, what do high-stakes fantasy drafters think of players compared to those average every-year fantasy players? And what I found was kinda shocking. There's some names we need to discuss. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Hopefully everyone is doing well out there today, where we continue to make our push to 250,000 subscribers. If you're not subscribed to the channel, right now is a great time to do so. And we're gonna have a little bit of fun today. I went through and looked at some high stakes ADP over on NFC, the National Football Championship website. If you're not familiar with it, it's leagues that have high value buy-ins, but I also went and looked at some normal ADP on sites like Sleeper and ESPN, where a lot of people do their fantasy football drafting. Now, let's just say there were some differences, but there kind of has to be, right? I mean, the NFC has leagues that are drafting with $1,800 buy-ins as of right now. Those dudes better take it pretty seriously. So who were some of those players that had the bigger differences? The first one is James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. Now, James Conner on NFC was going 8 picks later, so they're not valuing him quite as much as they are over on Sleeper and ESPN. Now, early in the offseason, he was a darling of a ton of people in the fantasy space because of the value where he was going. Now, all of a sudden, we are starting to see and hear a whole lot more about Trey Benson, and people are really listening. Between the injury concerns yearly and now the potential split in touches in this backfield, the high-stakes guys are backing off James Conner some. I do view James Conner as an early season stopgap, not someone I can plan on counting on all season long. So I guess I understand maybe why they're not valuing him as much in high-stakes leagues. Next up is TJ Hawkinson, though, tight end of the Minnesota Vikings. Right now, he's actually going 14.5 spots later on NFC than he is on ESPN and Sleeper. Hawk is actually going a full 20 spots earlier on Sleeper than he is in these high-stakes leagues. Now, I don't know if it's because of the uncertainty surrounding JJ McCarthy and his first year starting, or if there's just other guys around that similar ADP that they believe have more upside. I think what this really speaks to is the fact that once you get past the big 3 tight ends, and I'm talking Kittle, Bowers, and McBride, the mid-round tight ends have a really similar floor and ceiling, so they're really telling us just to wait a little bit longer and grab some of those stud running backs and wide receivers a little bit earlier. Now, after Hawk, we had Travis Hunter of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is also going 14 spots later on NFC than he is on ESPN and Sleeper. That means he's going a full round later in high-stakes leagues. Is it the uncertainty of him playing offense or defense? Is it that high-stakes guys just prefer more proven guys at this point of the drafts? Now, all signs are pointing to Travis Hunter having a pretty big role on offense this year, but you gotta remember, in most leagues, I'm sure he'll also get points for tackles, interceptions, and even defensive touchdowns if he were to get a pick 6. Having an offensive player that has the potential to also gain you defensive points could be an added bonus for you guys in leagues that keep that scoring. Now, if you do get that slight bump in scoring in your league, I honestly don't hate Travis Hunter in the 6th round. Now, real quick before I move on to the next player, I gotta plug today's sponsor, SeatGeek. That's right, the football season is right around the corner, and I am pumped to grab some tickets on SeatGeek. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app, and they've got more than 70,000 events on there right now. Concerts, sports, festivals, you name it, they got it. I use SeatGeek all the time. A couple months back, I scored some amazing seats for a concert, and it was super easy. You just open the app, scroll through all the tickets in one place, and see exactly which ones are the best deals. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. No guessing, just the best prices fast. But you know I came through for you. All you gotta do is use the referral code HEADLINERS at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. That's $20 off with promo code HEADLINERS. Links to everything down below in the description. But let's keep looking at some of these differences. The next up is RJ Harvey, rookie running back of the Denver Broncos. Right now, he's going 13.5 spots later in high-stakes leagues. Yet another rookie in high stakes that guys just aren't overly high on. Harvey is going over a full round later in these high-stakes leagues. Now, the signing of J.K. Dobbins will hinder the start of the season for sure, but similar to James Conner, I view J.K. Dobbins as someone that I can't really rely upon for a full 17-game season. RJ Harvey is by far the best option in the Denver backfield. To me, this signals that the high-stakes guys are expecting RJ Harvey to start slow to the season and would rather find a more proven guy at this point of the draft. Next up is Jauan Jennings, wide receiver of the San Francisco 49ers, and he is going way earlier in high-stakes leagues. Right now, he is going 21.5 spots earlier on NFC than he is on ESPN and Sleeper. The high-stakes guys are basically telling all of us that the San Francisco passing offense is being slept on this offseason. With Deebo Samuel gone to Washington and Brandon Ayuk not fully healthy, Jennings becomes a top 2 wide receiver on what has been one of the better passing offenses in the NFL over the last few years. Now, Jennings is barely inside the top 100 players in most drafts. However, he's fringe top 75 in high-stakes leagues, and that is a huge difference. Now, you all know that I personally would prefer Ricky Pearsall in San Francisco. I've been talking about him all offseason, but don't worry, we'll talk about him in just a few minutes. Now, after Jennings, we got yet another rookie. It's Jaden Higgins, wide receiver in Houston, and he is going 20 spots later on NFC. They just do not love themselves some mid-round rookies over there, because this is just another rookie that the high-stakes guys aren't buying into. 20 spots lower is a huge difference. The biggest reason I could find was Christian Kirk is who they're actually going after instead. Christian Kirk is currently going 53 picks earlier in high-stakes leagues than he is in leagues on ESPN and Sleeper. He's actually at 177th overall on those two sites, where he's at 124 in the NFC ADP. Now, we talked Christian Kirk last week, and maybe we need to look into him a little bit more. He's the current starting slot wide receiver in Houston in a role that we've seen Tank Dell produce in the past. Are too many people buying into the rookie hype in Houston, and should we just be paying attention to Christian Kirk, a proven slot guy in the NFL? If you ask the high-stakes guys, they're going to tell you yes. Now, after Higgins, we got Najee Harris, running back of the LA Chargers, and the NFC is taking him much earlier than the guys in Sleeper and ESPN leagues. It really looks like the high-stakes guys are not worried about the eye injury, and they don't think it's going to be 100% Omarion Hampton this season. Now, we have said all along that a 100% healthy Najee is going to be close to a 50-50 split in this backfield with the rookie. Now, don't get me wrong, we love Omarion Hampton. We've even come out and said that maybe next season in 2026, he's a top 5 to 10 running back in fantasy football. But a healthy Najee is still a great 1-2 punch of a backfield. Now, even if Najee Harris starts slow, the high-stakes guys expect him to be back at some point, and they are stashing him on their benches. But then we go back to yet another rookie, and no, they don't hate all rookies. You'll see some here in a few minutes. But Kyle Williams, wide receiver of the New England Patriots, is going 17 spots later in high-stakes leagues. Another rookie that the high-stakes guys are just letting slide a little bit. You have to think this has to do a lot with the health of Stephon Diggs at this point. Also has a lot to do with another player that's coming up on this list that they overvalue a lot more than ESPN and Sleeper does. But if I look at this situation, I see a team with a lot of options on offense. However, there are very few guys with established roles. So because of that, they're basically just looking elsewhere when it comes to Kyle Williams. How about another wide receiver, Rashad Bateman in Baltimore? The high-stakes guys love themselves some Rashad Bateman. He's going 23 spots earlier, and everyone is out there talking about DeAndre Hopkins and Zay Flowers. But the high-stakes guys are grabbing Rashad Bateman almost 2 rounds earlier in ADP. Bateman is coming off a career year in production, and they expect that momentum coming into this season. Now, I could see the volume still going the way of Zay Flowers and DeAndre Hopkins, but the big plays and the touchdown upside still remains with Rashad Bateman. Do not forget, he had 9 touchdowns just last season. Now, after him, we got Marquise Hollywood Brown of the Kansas City Chiefs. The NFC is taking him 18 spots earlier. Now, this has to be because of the upcoming suspension to Rashee Rice. But why are drafters on ESPN and Sleeper not doing the same thing? Hollywood Brown spent most of 2024 injured, but could have a huge role after the first month of the season when everyone expects Rashee Rice to be suspended. So in reality, he's a wide receiver that could have some week 1 value that even grows as we get towards the middle of the season. Hollywood Brown could definitely provide some pop to a team that needs some wide receiver help right off the bat. Now, another wide receiver that the high-stakes guys really like is Demario Douglas of the New England Patriots, and this is who I was referring to a little bit earlier when talking about Kyle Williams. They prefer Demario Douglas over Kyle Williams. Now, Douglas has looked great in camp and is the current starting slot wide receiver for the New England Patriots. And he has to be the main reason as to why they aren't valuing Kyle Williams as high right now. Don't forget that Demario Douglas had a career year last year, and they expect him to build on that with this improved offense in New England this season. He's really not a name that a lot of people talk about, but maybe we should be. Now, there were some other notable guys that I did want to bring up because I have been talking about these guys all off season long. And it makes me feel good to know that the guys out there paying $1,800 a league to play some fantasy football agree with what we've been talking about this offseason. We have guys like Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's going 11 picks earlier in high-stakes leagues. I love Egbuka this year. With Chris Godwin not being 100% healthy and having a high likelihood of re-injury at some point this year, Egbuka, who can play inside and outside, we've talked about him all offseason. How about Deebo Samuel? He's going 11.5 picks earlier in high-stakes leagues. And I get it, a lot of people don't want to buy into Deebo Samuel, but at the point in which he's being drafted, the risk is minimal. He's going to get more of an opportunity in this Washington offense, and we already know that Terry McLaurin isn't exactly excited to be there right now. Now, what about my dude Wan'Dale Robinson, who I've been talking about all off-season long? In high-stakes leagues, he's going over 2 rounds earlier, 27.5 picks early. And this one is simple. In the double-digit rounds, it's really hard to find a wide receiver who's had a season with at least 140 targets at that point. They didn't add any other offensive weapons in New York. All they really did was improve their quarterback play. So if Wan'Dale's anywhere near 100+ targets, he's a steal at that point of the draft. Now after him, Ricky Pearsall, who we mentioned earlier. He's going 18 picks earlier on NFC. Don't forget that this guy has first-round draft capital and really didn't get to show what he was made of last year because he was recovering from being shot. With Deebo gone and Brandon Ayuk less than 100%, and we've already seen Pearsall and Purdy have some pretty good chemistry, there's a reason we've been talking him up all off-season long. He's potentially the wide receiver 1 on one of the league's top passing offenses. But let's finish it out with a rookie, another rookie. So as you can see, there's a couple rookies they like. This one is Teteroa McMillan, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, another guy we have been talking up for quite some time. Now in high-stakes leagues, he's being drafted 10 spots earlier than ESPN and Sleeper. Now people are actually starting to see the connection between Bryce Young and T-Mac on tape. Preseason games are happening, camp highlights are floating around social media. But as I've been saying for months, Teteroa McMillan is super similar to Mike Evans. He may not be a guy that racks up 120 receptions a season, but with his big playability, he can rip off yardage in chunks. His ADP is already starting to climb, and the high-stakes guys agree with it. But alright, in no way am I coming on here and saying, hey, the high-stakes guys are smarter than everyone else, or they can see the future better than anyone else, because that's not the case. We're always looking for fun and exciting ways to try to break down and analyze players for fantasy football. And today's show was just another way to look at things a little bit differently. So answer me this question. Who is the player now that's moving up your draft board?